is Black money?
About economic liberation and freedom.
Critical conversations to invigorate our communities through Black-led CDFIs.
But most importantly, we want people to create wealth.
When we look at our communities, we still see a big disinvestment.
Going from resourceful to resourced.
CDFIs have that high touch. They understand their customers. They know how to reach out to those customers. They stay in touch with those customers.
We are trying to create job makers and not just job takers.
Yeah, I've even heard it said recently that great leaders don't lead from the top down, they lead from the bottom up because they're actually lifting everybody.
We have to do more than just being a regular lender.
Don't give me this story about if I teach you how to fish. Give me some money.
Give me some money. What's going on, everybody? Justin Minott from the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs here with the great Tate Hill, President and CEO of Access Plus Capital. Now, Tate, before we get into the content here, I just got to let everybody know what kind of a leader you are. So Tate shows up on this in our pregame, right? Tie buttoned up. He's got a pin. His beard's looking amazing. You know, look at that. The smile, his teeth are even just immaculate. Everything about it just made me, it was just excellence. And I was on here and I was, we were backstage with Angela Milton, my colleague here at the Alliance. And she's like, boy, you look like a scrub. She never said that. She said, you look like, a donkey trying to stand next to a stallion. And it's just not, no, she never said that either. But Angela does help me get my stuff together. Shout out to Angela Milton. What did you say, Angela? She doesn't want to be on the front stage here. So I got the mic. I can say whatever I want. Oh, man. Anyway, I digress. Good to be with everybody today. Hop in the chat. Let us know who is here in the digital building. We love when y'all network in the chat and ask good questions. So without further ado, we're here with the man of the hour, Tate Hill. Good to have you here.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's good to be here on this good Tuesday morning.
Of course, man. Of course. And thank you for looking so sharp and making me get my life together. Really appreciate it. All right. So Tate, here's where we're going first. Who is Tate Hill? At the core, at the essence, what are you made of? What are you all about? Give people a sense of Mr. Tate Hill.
Well, first I have to say I am the son of Tate Hill Sr. and Carla Hill, who are entrepreneurs. They're pastors in our community, and they are at the foundation of who I am. When I think about my values, the things that are my principles, and how I live my life, I learned that from my parents, and they ingrained most of the key lessons in my life. And so when I think about who I am, I have to first thank mom and dad for the investments that they have made in me, and placing a sense of understanding and thinking about one's purpose. That is, and recognizing you're not here just for yourself. You have a responsibility to family, to community. That is a key part of who I am. I'm the little black boy who grew up in Southwest Fresno on the other side of the tracks, literally. And a neighborhood that has had its own challenges, some of the highest rates of concentrated poverty, but also one of the greatest communities for connectivity and togetherness. And we've seen that time and time again as our community has seen so many things happen. And so I really stand on the shoulders of so many people that have invested into me, invested into my community, invested into what they saw in potential. And they constantly remind me, make sure that you're also pouring into the lives of other folks.
I love it. And I see it on you, man. So shout out to mom and pops. I want to know something. How did growing up with pastors affect? Now, you mentioned some of these pieces, but how did that shape your approach to leadership?
Yes. So yeah, it definitely had an impact as a PK. My parents grew up, working in the church. I grew up working in our church, and initially, my parents weren't the pastor's wife there, but that work ethic of um, you must give back. You must contribute to something that's larger than you.
Mm.
Uh, that that we're here, not just for ourselves, not even just for our families, but we have a God-given purpose, and we need to find out what that is and understand what that is. But it really gave me a sense of taking this attitude, and something that President Barack Obama speaks to oftentimes, of just getting things done.
Mm.
Working for and working for the community, working for a small church, or being involved in a small church. You have to do a lot of different things, and that really translates into community-based work. And so, to me, it was an easy transition.
Mm.
It was an easy transition. Low budget, no problem. We know how to do
Sure, we got this.
Folks not acting right, we can deal with that.
Right.
Understanding that you're oftentimes fighting causes and things that are much greater than you.
Mm.
I understand that, and so it really has set some principles for. Also, I think the other, I guess, maybe key thing is um, you have to love the people. You have to love this work. And if you don't, you're going to find yourself frustrated, mad, leaving, bitter. And I really appreciate that my parents taught me not to become bitter, even in difficult situations and circumstances, but to understand that in many cases, the person is doing the best that they can with the knowledge and the information that they have. And what can I do to help make that situation better? How can I encourage, inspire, support them in that, while also holding up a principle and standard that oftentimes also they can do better?
Yes, brilliant, brilliant. I love it. I love this formation. Now, on this note, talk about how you got involved at Access Plus Capital. Give us a bit of that journey, because I know it hasn't been a straight line to this work.
No, it was best, probably in some cases it was a scribbly line
Sure.
that eventually came back to some of my roots. So, Fresno State graduate, go Bulldogs. I graduated as
Y'all have like a sign, like a bulldog sign that
no,
like?
no,
Okay.
no. If anybody tells you that they have a
or
Bulldog sign from Fresno, they in a part of a different.
Okay,
kind of
that's good. That's good. I'm going to use that. You're like, no, you're not the real deal.
I'm not a part of that kind of group. So, but like many young people who live in Central California. So, for those who are not maybe familiar with Fresno, Fresno is in Central California. We're midway between Los Angeles and San Francisco Bay Area, very largely rural, but Fresno County is a 1 million person population county. So it's big, but it's small compared to when you have San Francisco and Los Angeles and Silicon Valley as your next door neighbors, right?
Mm.
And so for like a lot of young people and communities like Fresno in the Central Valley, there's sometimes limited opportunities, or what seem as limited opportunities. So like many graduates, I thought I had to leave Fresno. There was nothing here for me. I did a great fellowship program that really opened up my eyes to the Central Valley. It was with the Great Valley Center. And it showed me that there was so much opportunity here in the Valley. And I went from, I've got to work for a commercial bank, financial advisor company, because that's all I knew that was available in the financial world. This concept of community development, nonprofit lending. I mean, that concept, I was not aware about it at all. And so I started really my nonprofit journey working for affordable housing, self-help housing organization, and then a neighborhood community development corporation right in my neighborhood, like 3 blocks away from where my parents grew up, and
Incredible.
just been able to work for an organization that gave me an opportunity to work on everything from small business training to help establishing an African American loan fund, even though I had no idea what I was doing.
Good.
And we just giving out loans. I mean, we were giving out loans. We didn't have a whole system and process.
Wow.
But those were the seeds into beginning to learn about the challenges of community development, the challenges around policy, and how those components interact. And I eventually found myself at the Black Chamber of Commerce, and it was a traditional Black Chamber of Commerce. We did banquets, we did luncheons, and so forth. But realized that there could be a lot more to that, and so we started doing this thing. We heard about this thing called like TA, technical assistance, and our businesses needing that around supplier diversity. And we were bringing in, all the big companies, AT&T, PG&E, Wells Fargo, our local municipalities. And we were connecting them to Black and minority businesses. And we would get them in front of them, and they would be great. They'd be prepared. They would have their certifications and so forth. And the issue would become is, okay, you're ready for a contract opportunity. Do you have the capital to front load this project? This is a $500,000 project. It's $1 million project. Can you front load the capital? And so we were doing all this work of the policy work and engaging with lawmakers and procurement organizations, and we were being stopped by capital. And so I realized it's great to do that component. The policy portion is important, but if the capital is not there, then the business is going to be stymied. It's going to be stopped. And so I kind of connected with this organization called Fresno CDFI. Again, really didn't know anything about this organization and group. And I realized, okay, you're different from a traditional bank, and you help the businesses. Okay, you've been working with immigrant businesses. We have a very large Southeast Asian community in this region. And so I eventually applied for a position. And I didn't have the lending experience. I knew programming, I knew technical assistance, I knew the community. And they said, no, the position you apply for, we're going to give that to someone else, but we think you need to be at this organization. So we're going to create a whole position for you.
Now that's some placemaking. I love that.
Yeah. And so it demonstrated the vision even of the leadership then to say, okay, we see something in you that aligns with our values and who we are and where we want to be. And we want to bring you into this organization. And that to me just speaks to who CDFIs are and the work that they do, all mission-based lenders do. And that was actually 8 years ago. That was 8 years ago. Incredible. 4 years ago, I became the CEO during this little thing that was happening, this pandemic. I don't know if you heard about it.
4 years ago. Yeah, let me check the tape. Right. A little bit.
Yeah. Right in the middle of the pandemic, July 2020.
Wow.
The board appointed me their new and first time full-time CEO of then Access Plus Capital.
Wow. Incredible. I love this.
And there's a whole lot of stories in between that, but we only got so much time.
Of course, but I love that people get to see, what you say, the scribbly path to impact. And it's not always linear, but it does come back around if you're slow enough to pay attention or quiet enough to pay attention. I'm very curious about, you're literally from the community you serve, proximate to this work in ways that I think is very rare in this space. Talk about, the benefit of your background in the work that you're doing. And I'll say this first. I mean, CDFIs, the strength of them is that they're proximate to their communities, right? We're on the ground, serving people, know intimately what people are going through. But this is another level, right? Like you're literally coming from where you serve. So talk about that and how that impacts your work.
Yeah, so there is a reality to then um, uh, community responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you are based in the community that you serve, you're going to the restaurants, you're going to the grocery stores, you're going to the barber shops, the insurance agents, the retail stores, where also these are also your clients. And there is like a reality to that work to see the challenges, but also understanding the opportunities that these business owners have, that many cases traditional institutions don't see. They don't understand, why we should finance, a hair supply company in an African American community. I mean, how much money would a person be spending on hair?
Right.
When we know that there's opportunities there. And when we look at where we've done majority of our lending and our work, upwards 75 to 80% of our lending historically has gone to people of color. This last year, over 90% of those loans went to entrepreneurs of color and women. And so actually it's like 96%, if
Come
you're
on.
counting specifics, 96%.
I want the specifics. Let's give them the numbers.
96% went to entrepreneurs of color and women. And in a community where African Americans are countywide about 5 to 6%, Asian communities are about 10 to 12%. We're also about 55% Latino. Last year, we did over 20%, almost 25% of our loans went to African Americans. And again, what it really points to in our lending is the intentionality that we must have in our work. It could be easily that, certain populations, certain groups just get missed over. And when I initially came to the organization, I think we were doing like 5 to 6 loans a year to African Americans. But it was also about how do you build community. It wasn't, because the organization didn't want to do African American lending, but we have to go beyond just intention and being strategic with our partnerships, with our relationships, engaging with our funders, engaging with other organizations in the community to make things happen. And so I'm really proud of the team that we have, that I have the privilege of leading, that is also committed to this work.
That's brilliant. And I loving the chat here. Make sure you're hopping in. Shout out to Jose, Christopher. This person I'm not seeing, it just says LinkedIn user, but you're awesome, whoever you are. And Bernard Boudreau. Oh, good name. That's I speak French, so that's kind of fun.
I know him.
Loving the work. Now, Tate, and also who else is here? I know there's some people on here. Who else is in the building? Hop on, say what's up, ask some questions. Make sure you are hopping in the chat. Now, you talked about, sometimes these people can get glossed over if you don't take that intentionality and move it to strategy and execution. And a lot of times, it feels like we water down this language out. Like people talk about people are underrepresented, they're whatever these kind of words are. And it's like, let's get serious. They're historically excluded, right? There are ways that they're just not being brought to the table, and that people are not actually reaching out to make sure that they're getting access to some of these things that they don't even know how to get there, right? So how have you gone from intention to inclusion, actual inclusion, making sure that people are here, knowing that these resources exist, can get access to them, because you're not looking at it in some of the more traditional ways that fit a monolithic view of this lending industry, right? So what's that all about?
Yeah, so during the pandemic, one of the things that our board and then our staff and following the leadership of our board was to really evaluate what are the things that we measure, and what gets measured gets managed, right? And so we were very intentional about what is the direction that this organization is going. And we really said our vision is that access to capital is no longer a barrier to success. Now we know capital doesn't solve all things, but it does solve a lot.
Right.
It does solve many of those
and
things.
You're saying, hey, if we address one thing, it's this.
Is this. And so we were very intentional and saying, okay, where are the gaps that we are seeing within our own data? What are the data that we're seeing within the region, within the state? And then also how does this tie into what's happening nationally? And we said there is a racial wealth gap in this country, in this city, in these communities. Sure. And so we're going to focus and have a strategic focus on the communities most underinvested in. And I use that term, most underinvested. That puts the onus on the institutions.
Right. See, that really gets to what has been so bothersome. Like, something just bothers me about these, like, underrepresented, or like, oh, they just happen to not be there. It's like, no. Like, there are some very systemic pieces at play. And I like this underinvested and how it shines the mirror, or puts the mirror back on the institution. Come on, keep going, keep cooking.
Definitely. And I didn't coin that. That was from a partner, as a part of the California Coalition for Small Business Justice, Racial Justice. And we, as a group of CDFIs, technical assistants, business coaching providers, started really looking at what must we do? Not what could we do, what would be nice, what would be cute, but what must we do to really move the needle? How do we think about who we're targeting as far as outreach, engagement, from a programmatic side? Also, what are the things that we need to do in changing our practices, our underwriting practices that have historically excluded populations, right? Whole segments of our community. And what kind of reminds me, and we were talking about this a little bit earlier. I watched this movie this week. It was referred to me by one of my board members, called The Banker, with Anthony Mackie and Samuel Jackson, and it's positioned, I think, in the 60s, of two Black men that recognize the importance of creating housing opportunities by owning real estate, and then also eventually owning a bank. And their whole concept is that Black folks are not being able to access the American dream, which is home ownership and access to financial services and products. And so, in the same concept, our organization was become very intentional at the board level, saying, here are the things that we're measuring, here are the things that are important. And then bringing that all the way down through the organization. We use an entrepreneurial operating system that really connects everyone from the board down to each individual, of understanding how does my work tie to the organizational goals, and those organizational goals align with our values, our mission, and the outcomes that we want to receive. And so when someone's answering the phone, they understand, okay, I'm not just answering the phone, I'm helping support the mission. When we do technical assistance, or when we're reporting on a grant, that data is then being used to tell the story of small businesses in our community whose voices otherwise are not heard. And so all
beautiful
those
leadership, Tate. Beautiful.
All those elements. Yeah. And so it's just, and And again, this all comes through the investments of others, of what are the best strategies for us to have impact in our community. And so what we saw, back in 2020, where, we were probably 10, 12%, and that was actually an improvement for African-American lending. At one point, we got down to almost zero in Asian lending, which is really a tragedy because we started primarily servicing Southeast Asian immigrant farmers, right?
Sure.
That's how our organization, that was the genesis of our organization. And now today, those two groups make up about 40% of our lending on a daily basis. And we do that in part through partnerships. And so we realize in that ecosystem of work, we can't do things by ourselves, right? We're not going to solve the racial wealth gap. And even in Fresno County, we serve 15 counties, but we're not going to even serve it in one county doing the work by ourselves. And so also aligning our partners to that same strategy, or making sure the partners that we have are aligned to that strategy. We can't make people do things, but we can find the people that want to do the things that are important to us.
That makes so much sense. Now, talk about this approach to ecosystem building. It keeps coming up. I think it's a very important piece, specifically for Black-led CDFIs in terms of their strategy. How do you play as an ecosystem player in this game versus just, solo practitioner trying to issue some loans on the side?
Yeah, so we did a study, we commissioned a study in 2022, and we did it with our Central Valley Community Foundation to look at kind of what is the demand and need for CDFI mission-based lending in Fresno County. And we used that just as a scope. And so we partnered with P2 Advisors and Freeman Associates and really looked at what was the capital gap. And what we found based on Federal Reserve Bank credit surveys, looking at SBA data, CDFI data, local interviews and so forth, that there was a $3 billion gap for small businesses.
Billion with a B.
With a B. In Fresno County, not the whole state of California.
Right. When you said about 1 million people?
About 1 million people. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, y'all do the math. I know y'all smart enough out here. Yeah.
And so we saw that even if we 10x'd our lending, even if all the CDFIs 10x their lending, we'd be hitting maybe 2 or 3%, right? And so this concept of there is a set of organizations and stakeholders that influence an outcome or a set of outcomes. And we can't do it all. But we can be a part of a system that helps to make an impact. And so this work of ecosystem work of engaging with technical assistance partners, other culturally competent and responsive programs and organizations, with our banking partners, with local government, with other funders like foundations and other entities, to say, how do we collectively create impact? And when you think about like a good logic model, that impact that happens over years, your program matter work is not doing that by itself, right? No matter how great the program is, no matter how much they love you, the work is a combination, right? And there's a kind of a scripture that speaks to that, like that one plants, another waters, right? So we all are not doing everything, and we can't be the end all to any of our communities, right? We must partner with other entities to get things done. And it's just as we think about any team, no matter how great the basketball player is, they cannot win the championship by themselves. And we've seen some really great players that their team wasn't there, right? And so they could never win. And so this ecosystem approach is so critical to also making sure our constituencies are connected and aligned to what's happening also within that region, within that ecosystem of work. And so we've been really working on that in our various communities that we're working in geographically, also around small business and business coaching, technical assistance or business coaching, and really saying, what are we collectively doing? And here in California, there's been a lot of work around that called California Jobs First that looks at that on a regional level and the importance of kind of a three-pronged approach. One is, how do we build the ecosystem, right? How do we have support for that work? A lot like what the Alliance does, right? How do you have entity or resources and support that helps a body of individuals and organizations? Because that coordination doesn't happen by itself. It doesn't happen by osmosis. Someone has to be tasked and responsible for doing that. The other two key components is, particularly for business, is around business coaching. In our case for lending is, how do we make sure that businesses are loan ready? Are their capital ready? Whether their capital is a grant, whether it's debt, whether it's equity, how are they capital ready? And so we're not just doing like random workshops and sessions. How do we really align that work? And then, of course, the last is the capital itself, right? And so you could do those first two. If you don't have the capital, just like I was sharing in the procurement situation, if you don't have the capital that's properly aligned, then it won't flow, right? The businesses won't grow. They won't have those new opportunities. And so that ecosystem work becomes so critical to our individual success as an organization, but also us contributing to the broader community.
Yeah. Now talk about capital alignment. I love that concept. And specifically to maybe some business owners that are listening to this, how do you know what type of capital is the right capital? And I'm going to caveat this by saying a lot of folks, it's like, I need to get venture capital. I need to get investors. I need to get angel investment, right? And they're very specific, but it's like, if you don't know exactly where you're going and how you need to get there, it's like, you could be saying, hey, I want a Ferrari, but you're trying to cross a lake. I don't care how good the Ferrari is, you need a boat. Like, so the alliance piece, I think, is key. So talk about some of the factors that people should be thinking about, and even for lenders to be thinking about aligning the capital to the actual needs of the business that are going to help that business grow and thrive.
No, it's a wonderful question. And it's one that we oftentimes struggle with. Someone may come to us as a business asking for a loan. And in some cases, they may be better suited for venture capital. Now, of course, the challenge of that is, do I have access to that, right? And so, and so that, so really it's about aligning what your needs are as a business. What are you willing to do, right? If you don't want to give up any ownership of the business, well, venture capital is probably not for you. If you're concerned about, you don't want to do any kind of guarantees or collateral or anything to that effect, probably lending capital is going to be really challenging for you. But part of our work as the lender, as the technical assistance provider, as the business coach, as a culturally competent service provider, is to share those options and to really understand what are the concerns that business owner has about what might be the best form of capital for their business, right? What are your concerns about, giving up a piece of the ownership of the business? Or what is your concerns about signing as a guarantor? And a big portion of that is, in many cases, what we find is, for many of our clients, we are their first business loan, right? They may have had a personal loan, or they've had a car or mortgage, but the business loan is different. And so been able to provide them that financial knowledge and a trusting environment. It's many cases, it's scary for a business owner to come say, okay, here's my whole business, my financial, all my information, examine or assess me,
right?
Give me some kind of rating in your whatever system you have that makes me trustworthy to receive your dollars, right? That can be
that's vulnerable.
A challenging situation, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the key things that we do is we really try to establish that trust with the business owner. Telling them pretty much we've seen all circumstances, pretty much we've seen it all. And so there's nothing too much you're going to surprise us with. We've seen it all if it can be reported, we've seen it, and we've seen a lot of the stuff that don't even get reported. So
right.
So we're coming in a space of not necessarily of judgment, but trying to understand. And our part of our concept, at least for us, is looking for the yes. We want to look for the yes, and that's really different from a lot of traditional lending. It's okay, you have to really approve a yes.
Right. They're guilty until proven innocent.
You are guilty. Yeah. Right. And we're holding you in jail on top of that. Right. The bail is high, but we really try to look for the yes. And so what that oftentimes means is maybe our process is not the fastest. We're not a credit score, 15-second response lender, right? We are evaluating you as a business. We want to know that story. We're utilizing those C's, and credit score is not the main one. And so you've been able to have that conversation because we believe it as a relationship, right? We're going to be providing support to that business throughout that loan. If they need to come back to us, they can come back for another loan. And so we really think about it as, again, we don't want the capital to be the barrier to success. And we want that business to thrive in our region. So this is not about a transaction. This is about a relationship that we want to have with our businesses. And I can think of, of several of the 1,000+ businesses that we have provided loan capital to outside of all the COVID-related forgivable loans and so forth, but the 1,000+ businesses who are now thriving. And sometimes they get too big for us. Like, hey, we can't even accommodate that capital need.
Which is a good problem, right? Like we want to be working ourselves out of a job in this space, right?
Definitely. And we're able to many times bridge them back to a traditional bank or another lender, or maybe a much larger CDFI that can support them with their work. But that relationship is so critical. And it's really the same thing that large businesses get, right? They're not just, someone that's taken out $100 million loan. They're just not sending in their payments and talking to the person once a year. That lender is engaging with them, supporting them, providing them information, updating them on trends of what's happening in the industry. And we want to provide those same layers of support to our businesses. How can you effectively utilize your resources to maximize your profit as a business? How can you grow your sales? How can you reduce your expenses? Are there technologies that you can use that will make you more efficient and effective and responsive to your customers? Where can we help you and to your work? And so again, we try to find that yes for the business, and also in the cases where we can't help them now, maybe we can help them a year from now, 6 months from now, a year and a half from now. And we've had those businesses that have followed that technical assistance financial plan, and we're able to come back to us. And so we realize, like, just the providing that education, providing that knowledge that's relevant to the business, not in a demeaning way. We're not here as the high and mighty lender, but we're here as a business partner that in many cases we understand where you've been. A number of our staff have businesses, have had businesses, come from parents that have businesses, and again, have seen the gamut of what that looks like behind closed doors. And so we come from a place of relationship and relevance, like understanding, this work is hard. Even after you get the loan, that is just the beginning of the work, right? You still gotta make the hamburgers, you still gotta sell it, you gotta deal with your employees and customers. And so so we are there as a partner. And I think the more lenders take on that approach, the more impact we're going to see.
Brilliant, brilliant. I want to give a shout out to a couple folks here. I see Von Zell, I see Sharella. Now, Von Zell, everybody should know, is doing some incredible work in the business credit space. So you talk about personal credit, but making sure that people are accessing business credit, that's a whole other world. So make sure you follow him here on LinkedIn and connect. I see you, Wilfred. Here, let's get Wilfred up here. Look at that. Wilfred been on the show as a commentator here before. So good to see you. Good to see you. Now, a couple questions that are coming through the chat here that I want to make sure we get to. One from Marvin Gunn. Thanks for this question. Are CDFIs able to lend in other communities or restricted to the area region where they're located? Tate, I'll let you get that one. Talk about what the CDFI industry actually looks like from a regulation standpoint.
Right. Yes. So there are 1,300 plus CDFIs across the country. And I think that number is growing and changing all the time. There's also community development corporations. There's other mission-based lenders also. And it really just depends on the scope of their work. Some might be just specific to a neighborhood. Some might be citywide, statewide, or to a certain set of region. And there are some CDFIs who have nationwide scopes, right? Mm-hmm. And so there are multiple places where you can find CDFIs. You can go to African American Alliance. Opportunity Finance Network has a CDFI locator where you can find ones in your local community. I always encourage folks to find the local CDFI because they're going to be networked into kind of what's happening, what's going on. When you talk about your business and where you are, they're going to like, oh yeah, we know where that is. Or if there's certain nuances.
Hold on, this is a really good point. I really do think, I've never thought about it that way, Tate. Thanks for bringing this up. Go to the CDFI in your community, even if you don't think you're loan ready or whatever it is, because a lot of these people, most of them, and I can vouch for the Black-led ones, these are navigators. If they don't have it, they're going to send you to somebody. If if they can't do a loan or you're not ready for a loan or whatever, they're going to help you figure out, for the most part, they're going to help you get there, right? So it's like, you know, when your mom said, like, hey, if you're ever in a crazy situation, just look for the helpers. Look for the people who are out here trying to make the place a little bit better, trying to help some folks, and go to them, right? And that to me is the CDFIs, right? Is go to the helpers, whether or not you think you need capital. All right, off my soapbox, but I just love that point.
But no, also I think on a key point that we saw, and I think it's the Federal Reserve credit survey of small businesses. And I think that survey is actually literally happening right now. So if you're a small business, submit a response. It really helps to provide flavor and literally in some cases color to the responses.
But we need it. You can't have that food just with salt and pepper, everybody. You know, people think that pepper is spicy. Come on now.
Yeah, right, definitely. One of the things that came out of that survey is many cases businesses are really just self-electing themselves out of the credit process. That they think that they don't qualify. I mean, and there's been multiple studies. AEO did a study called the African American Tapestry a couple of years ago that also spoke to that. In many cases, businesses are self-selecting themselves out of the credit and the lending process because of experience or what they heard or what somebody told them, or maybe even they got rejected from a traditional bank. But CDFIs are not, in most cases, are not banks, not all of them. But they're not traditional banks, I'll say that. And so you might think, okay, you know what? I was rejected by XYZ National Bank or this other lender. There's no other options for me. Go to a CDFI. Sometimes they have capital and programs that are a lot of times are going to be more flexible on the underwriting side, maybe than a traditional lender. And they may be able to support you in some form or fashion. And so, so I would say don't self-select yourself out, right? You never can get the job you don't apply for. You never can get the capital you don't ask for. right? And so most CDFIs are going to be able to provide that support to you. If you have your credit report, if you have that readily available, hey, you can bring that with you. So it even avoids having to do a soft pull, but they can kind of look at it and kind of surmise where things are, where some questions that they may have that they need to address. But I think most CDFIs are not AI-based lending decisions. Some of them use that, nothing wrong with that. But most CDFIs are not. And so there is a person reviewing your application that is looking at your information. And so I would highly encourage you, if you have those kinds of questions, go to your local CDFI, go to your local mission-based lender.
I love it. Now, I'm going to say something. Now, we keep it real. And so everybody give me a little bit of grace on this and follow me to the end. There is this blessing that I've heard recently on social media. And you just talk about, just apply for the thing. Just go for it, right? The blessing is I wish you the audacity of a mediocre middle-aged white man. And what the blessing is, now here it is, and here's the stats, and please everybody follow me through. They were saying that, a white, cisgendered, straight male, right, will apply for a job that I forget what the number is. It's like 40% qualified for. They're like, oh yeah, that's enough. That's good enough. Like I can figure it out, whatever. Because, they're supported by this system that has them feeling like, yeah, I can take a chance. I can take a risk, whatever it is, right? A Black woman. And now if you layer on other things, right? Like maybe not, what's it called? Anyway, like not in a heterosexual relationship or whatever, right? Like you layer on some of these other layers of discrimination and these other pieces here, and it's even more, and it's like they felt like, just for a Black woman, felt like they had to apply, they could apply if they reached 110% of the qualifications. Like you had to be overqualified to apply for a thing. And I'm talking about just the mentality of go for it, right? So that's the blessing. Is like, I wish you the audacity of a mediocre middle-aged white man. Like just go for the thing and apply for the things if you are mostly qualified, because you're probably underestimating yourself. And even you were talking earlier on the show, right, that people disqualify themselves without even going and doing the thing. So I just want to encourage you, get out there, try the things there. Now we want to go to a couple more questions here. Vonzel, any advice for someone who should not be in business but is better off seeking a job? Like, how do you know when it is time for, intrapreneurship versus entrepreneurship?
No, and entrepreneurship is not for everyone. And also I think the concept of what is success for you, right? Just because you're not making $1 million doesn't mean that you don't have a successful business. If your business is supporting your household, then to me, that's success, right? So I think it's one about how we define success. But if year over year, the business is not profitable, right, where you're losing money or you're taking money from some element of your financial picture, spouse or partner or someone else, a family member is funding your dream to an extent, you have to kind of weigh that and weigh that, how is your outcomes aligning to your plan and your strategy? Are your outcomes way off? Or is it that it just needs to be fine-tuned? Do you have the proper support system? It could be that you just need a good assistant, and that good assistant would change the trajectory of your business, allowing you to do the things that you're really good at, and then you're delegating or contracting out those other elements, right? The things that you're not best suited to do or not the best utilization of your time. And so, and that's an assessment that you're going to have to make. In some cases, others will help you in making that assessment. If you have a loan and you're not profitable, or there's, your loan could be called, your customers could say, you know what, you thought you made the best, jambalaya, you don't. And so they might tell you,
But
you
get
need
out there and find
you need to
out.
go work. You need to go work at somebody else's restaurant and then start again.
Sure.
And this concept of, maybe the first business or the first concept of that business doesn't succeed. That's okay, as long as you are learning along the way. As long as you're staying principled in how you operate the business, then you could feel good about that outcome, right? If you keep within your principles, that you're learning from those experiences. There are so many people that are successful now that had, a first, second, third, fourth, maybe a fifth try at business before they really learned enough to develop the right recipe. And some people learn that by going and working for another business. Some people have the grit and the relationships and the tenacity and can just do it from scratch. That's much harder, but it's very possible. So there is no formulaic way to say, okay, after this amount of time, you must be successful. We see that different all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. And keep going and apply the entrepreneurial mindset to everything you do, right? Because that solving problems, doing all that type of stuff, that's going to raise your life in so many ways. I love that question. Thanks, Vonzel. Got one more question, and then I'm going to close with one of mine here. So Marvin Gunn, love this question. Who are you competing with? Are there other BIPOC mission-driven CDFIs in the same space? And I'm going to take one first crack, and then I'm going to pass it over to you. Is that what I've seen in the Alliance is more of a collaboration than competition, right? Which is like, ultimately, it's about the community rising. And so we're actually competing against some of these issues, historic exclusion, lack of access to capital. Like, that's the enemy, not the other people in the industry if we're doing it right. That's my take. What do you think?
I would just say amen to that. And so, no, it's so
Look
true.
where I made it.
Right. Yeah. We oftentimes are collaborating. That's why, as you mentioned earlier about that navigator space and the importance of just engaging with the CDFI, because many cases we're going to then tell you, so you don't have to go to 10 different CDFIs or banks. We may just say, you need to go over to this person, talk to Sally, and we know that this loan will probably work. This business need will work for them. So in many cases, we are collaborating with them. We're partnering with them. We're sending referrals back to each other. We in many cases, we're on maybe each other's boards. I mean, I'm on a board for Working Solutions, CDFI, who's statewide, right? And so many cases, we're working with each other to meet the need. And remember, I said, just an example, in Fresno County, there's a $3 billion gap. So all the CDFIs could be doing like $50 to $100 million, and we won't even hit 10% of that gap, right? And so there is such an abundance of need for capital and strategic and aligned capital, as what you shared earlier, that we need to be working with each other. And even relatively, while banks are competitive, there are also in many cases are referring deals to each other too. So they see.
Well, they address a very different need in the market, right? And this kind of goes back to this ecosystem approach. Is they fit a very different need.
Yeah, in many cases, our banking partners, they're referring deals over to us. They may say, okay, you don't fit our credit box. Maybe the business is too young, or your debt to income is too high, or whatever. Why don't you try out Access Plus Capital? Why don't you try out this other CDFI, this other mission-based lender, this other CDC that might be a good fit for your business? And then again, many cases at some point, what we find from our larger loans, in many cases, those loans don't even go to full term, because then the bank says, oh, you're operating well, you've gotten these things in alignment, we'll refinance that loan at probably at a better interest rate than what the mission-based or CDFI lender is going to provide you. And so we see that as a win for the client.
I love it. And thanks for everybody dropping the love in the chat for Tate and I. This is fun. Yeah, you can take it, Bernard. You can borrow that term. That's all yours, man. Well, and I think too, the piece around, if you're in a good relationship, right? It's you and your partner against the problem, not you against your partner, right? Like a lot of times we end up fighting each other for no damn reason. That's crazy. Like we need to be collaborating against the problem or towards something that matters. And so to me, it's about having your eyes on the right stuff, and even at the very, very top of some of these big businesses, they are collaborating. They're not, this is not, them like, of course they're competing and they're out here to win, but they're collaborating to get it done. So I love it. Yeah, y'all got these phrases. Now we're ending with this one, a nice light way to close the afternoon here is, what does Black liberation mean to you? Light little question.
Interesting enough, you asked this question. I was thinking about this concept of having the freedom to make choices. That freedom to make choices, and really, when you think about it, that's what all of us want: the freedom to be able to make choices. And what Black liberation means, in many cases, that ability to choose what I can do, how do I utilize my God-given talents and abilities? How do I leverage the relationships that I have for my community and my family? How do I also have the ability to uplift others that I see that need that support? How do I choose not to harm someone or place vengeance on someone that is in a fallen situation? That's a part of that liberty, right? That ability to choose and make the choice to do, that right and just and good thing. And so in many cases, as we think about capital, again, is not the end all, but it provides a lot of those, it allows for a lot of those choices, right? When we have, as a CDFI, as a mission-based lender, when we have the equity on our balance sheet, it allows us to determine what kind of loans do we want to do, right? It's not just solely someone else's plan and strategy, but what is it what are the loans, what are the lending, what are the activities, what are the investments that we want to make within our own community? And so to me, that it's a powerful component. And so when you see CDFIs and Black-led credit unions, or the combination of the two, shout out to my brother at People's Trust, Arlo Washington.
Doing big things,
Yeah, when you combine those two concepts, not only are we wanting to do the lending, but we also want to create that space for financial services. To me, that is liberation.
Yes. Now I want to make one plug for any philanthropists, funders out there. If you want to talk about a logic model or a theory of change that's going to make a difference, unrestricted capital here. Unrestricted capital, everybody repeat after me, for Black-led CDFIs, right? You invest in these organizations, the multiplier effect is ridiculous in terms of impact, right? So, and I'm just going to keep saying that until
thank you. We appreciate you saying that.
Of course. Now, I do have to ask one more question before we hop off here. Any relation to Willie Hill from Greater Cincinnati Micro Enterprise Initiative? And the reason I'm asking is not just because your last name is Hill, but he was on here talking about liberation is choice. And, and he took it in a bit of a different angle, but I was like, y'all must be distant cousins. Any relation?
Not that we know of. I've talked a lot with Willie Hill. That's a good brother there.
Right. But you started like, who's your cousin and your cousin's cousin?
We did try to go down the line. But as my dad says, one good hill is worth 2 or 3 of anything else. And so,
come on. I love it. Well, shout out to Willie Hill and shout out to you, Tate, for making time to be here. This has been incredible. Thank you for your wisdom, for your heart, for your mind. Any closing thoughts before we head off of this program today?
I just want to say thank you to you, Justin, and the Alliance for all the support. And I'm not just saying that because you have me on here, but I just really appreciate the leadership and the support that the African American Alliance of CDFI CEOs provides not only to our organization, but the body of organizations, the advocacy work, the connection to capital, just even the relationship and the support is just so critical. And I would say that the African American Alliance is a key part of the CDFI ecosystem of Black economics and for small businesses, and I would even say in our nation's fabric for African Americans. So thank you to the Alliance. Thank you, Justin, to your work. Keep up the faith, keep up the good work, and we hopefully look forward to seeing you soon.
Of course. Thank you so much. That means the world. And while y'all are at it, writing some checks, write some checks to the Alliance too, right? Because this is what we do. This is why we do it. Thank you to everybody who joined us on the show. You could have been anywhere else today, but you chose to be here with us live, and that's not a small thing. My one ask of everybody here is share this interview with your network. Just hit the share button because we love to amplify our collective impact by doing some of those things that doesn't cost anything, but we can get more eyes on Tate's work and on the CDFI industry as a whole. So we encourage you to do that. All right, without further ado, you say that at the end? I think I can, because I got the mic. Thank you so much for being here. Keep changing the world, y'all. Thanks, Tate. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Is Black money.
About economic liberation and freedom.
Critical conversations to invigorate our communities through Black-led CDFIs.
But most importantly, we want people to create wealth.
When we look at our communities, we still see a big disinvestment.
Going from resourceful to resourced.
CDFIs have that high touch. They understand their customers. They know how to reach out to those customers. They stay in touch with those customers.
We are trying to create job makers and not just job takers.
Yeah, I've even heard it said recently that great leaders don't lead from the top down, they lead from the bottom up, because they're actually lifting everybody.
We have to do more than just being a regular lender.
Don't give me this story about if I